Joining me is the country's top foreign affairs writer, Greg Sheridan of the Australian newspaper. Greg, great to catch up with you. Look, you have said on this show for months, years even, Joe Biden is in mental decline. So why is it that the Biden that we saw in that debate, such a shock to many Democrats and so many top media outlets?
Well, Andrew, it's great to be with you and welcome back. You know, the nation was distressed at your absence, but look, it's absurd. Anybody who's watched the videos knows that Biden has been in trouble for a couple of years. But I think that a lot of Democrats, a lot of people on the left in the media, and a lot of well-intentioned folks, see Donald Trump as the incarnation of a kind of transcendent evil, and therefore they think anything which stops Trump is morally justified. That's the only explanation for these insane prosecutions of Trump. I'm no fan of Trump myself, but I want reality and due process to take place. So until that debate, to criticise Biden for being plainly incompetent was somehow or other seen as aiding the return of Trump. But there's another thing I'd like to point out to you here, which is that Biden is actually an extremely unattractive character. His extreme selfishness in hanging on to the presidency when he is manifestly unfit for the job, as the whole world saw, means that the Democratic Party is in a terrible mess. America is in a terrible mess. You can't make him stand down unless he wants to. He's unbelievably stubborn, like most men who run for the presidency. He just believes he's the greatest, gift to God's green earth that has ever been discovered. And now you've got both sides of politics with really very bad candidates, although Biden is plainly far worse. And this is a mess of Biden's making.
Yeah, but, I get what you say. They thought, oh, Trump is so terrible, we can't criticise Biden. But I would have thought they'd say Trump is so evil, in their view, he's so evil that they had to make sure they had their own candidate good enough to beat him. I mean, if it really is that important, why would you stay with a bumbling fool that's losing his mind and pretending it's all okay, only to have it explode quite predictably in a debate? Why haven't they changed? Why didn't they change their president? Now, is it too late to stop him from being the candidate in November?
Well, it's too late unless he agrees. So in all this will sound very strange, Andrew, but let me put this to you. In all this, we mustn't underestimate Biden. Biden is unbelievably stubborn and, in a way, quite skillful. Now, my best information is that he has a few quite reasonable hours every day. He works a couple of hours between 10 and 4, and he generally knows what he's doing. He's not completely non-compos mentis, but obviously he wanders off and he needs to be brought back. Now, all the people around him, at his instigation, are courtiers. A lot of his cabinet secretaries, even very formidable people like Antony Blinken and so on, are many decades younger than him, and they're like staffers to him. And he hates being criticised, and he's set up a system where nobody criticises him. He hates being contradicted. He can be very nasty behind closed doors. And he engineered from day one a situation in which he couldn't be challenged. I mean, he chose Kamala Harris as vice president, partly because she ticked the identity politics boxes, but in my view, mainly because she was such an uninspiring alternative. Lots of presidents have done this. Nixon chose Agnew and Ford because he thought they were hopeless and no one would ever go to them as an alternative to him. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the guy he had as vice president before he switched to Harry Truman, was barking mad. And Menzies exiled a lot of potential leaders, Spender and Barwick and so on. A lot of leaders don't like any bright lights around them. If Biden had a competent vice president now, the discussion would be all over. But the short answer is there is no mechanism by which they can force him to stand down unless he does it willingly, and there's nothing in his personality to suggest that he has that kind of interest in anything beyond himself to do so. Unless he does it willingly, he's their candidate. And the final thought is, weird as it all is, and it's surpassingly weird, he could still win. I think Trump would be the favourite, but you can't rule out a Biden victory even so.
But then, the whole thing is, it raises one question: who the hell has actually been running the US behind this guy? But the other is, who would take over if he did step down? You say it's highly unlikely, or if he fell over, okay, particularly if he does win again. Kamala Harris is just a fool. I think even no serious conversation about who would replace him, says the vice president. She's just been written off. Who would replace him?
Well, she replaces him. If he leaves, she replaces him. So it's very hard to do anything else. Lyndon Johnson decided in 1968 he wouldn't run again because he was going to get beaten. So luckily he had a very good vice president, Hubert Humphrey, who who came within a whisker of defeating Nixon in 1968. But there are a couple of reasons she replaces him. First of all, in the Constitution, if he should resign the presidency goes to the vice president. Second of all, the hundreds of millions of dollars raised for Biden can only go to Harris because she's already on the ticket. If they replace him with Gavin Newsom or Gretchen Whitmer or somebody else, they have to presumably give all the money back to the donors, and the donors have to give it all over again to get to them. I wouldn't rule out something insane like Michelle Obama coming in. Because even Michelle Obama could come in.
Good point. Oh, don't tell me that.
So it's very, very messy. The whole thing is
just being so absurd. And Greg, you've got to ask yourself, China and Russia looking in at this, what the head of their main adversary in the world looks like, they must be laughing. Thank you so much indeed for your time.